So, what if everything you thought you knew about the Bible was based on a fundamental misunderstanding? Today, we are diving into a really challenging reinterpretation of Scripture. It's one that argues we have to go all the way back to the original Hebrew to unlock what it really means. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, the theological speaker whose work we're exploring throws down this gauntlet. It's a bold, provocative claim, and it really sets the stage for everything else. The basic idea? Without the original text, we're basically locked out of the Bible's true message.
All right, here's our roadmap. First, we'll break down the problem the speaker sees with how we read the Bible today. Then we'll get into his solution, this evidence-based method. After that, we'll see it in action on, you guessed it, the very first verse of the Bible. Then we'll explore the huge implications for core beliefs, and we'll wrap up with one last, very challenging question. Okay, so what's the big problem this speaker is trying to solve? Well, it all boils down to the huge distance in time and language between us and that original text. The way he sees it, every single translation, no matter how good, adds a layer of interpretation. You know, a word is chosen here, a meaning is shaded there, and all those little nuances, they can get lost. And over hundreds, even thousands of years, these layers just build up and up, creating a version of the text that might be really different from what the original authors actually intended. And the consequence of that? A lot of doctrines get accepted just because, well, that's how we've always been taught. But the speaker argues that when you rely on tradition without constantly checking it against the source language, you can end up on a path that's well-intentioned, but maybe critically flawed. So if that's the problem, what's the solution he's offering? Well, in response, he proposes this super strict, evidence-first way of understanding Scripture. He calls it the evidence-based method, and honestly, you should think of it like a legal case. In a courtroom, right, you can't just make a claim out of thin air. You have to present hard evidence. Well, it's the same idea here. This method demands that any theological claim has to be backed up by cold, hard linguistic evidence straight from the Hebrew text itself. And this is where it gets really interesting. This is where the theory meets practice. The speaker takes his method and applies it to the very beginning, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And let's just say the results are pretty startling. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I mean, we all know that line, right? But according to this analysis, we might not know it at all. Okay, so the first word we're going to put into the microscope is bara, which is the verb we translate as created. On the surface, seems simple enough, but as you'll see, context is absolutely everything. And here's the first really challenging piece of evidence he brings up. The speaker points out that over in the book of Ezekiel, the exact same word, Bara, is used to describe the creation of the king of Tyre, a figure that pretty much everyone agrees is a symbol for Satan. Right away, that suggests that Bara might have a much more complex, maybe even darker meaning than just to make something good. And this leads him to a pretty jaw-dropping conclusion. I mean, if bara can be used for both the creation of the world and a satanic figure, then this beautiful world we see isn't the perfect, pristine creation we imagine. Instead, he argues, it's a system that contained darkness and opposition right from its very beginning. And then there's the grammar, which is a real deep dive. You'd think, logically, that a beginning would be an ongoing thing, right? An incomplete action. But the speaker argues that the verb bara is actually in a completed tense. It's not was creating, it's more like had already created. Think of it this way. Creation wasn't a process that started, but a finished program that was installed. A complete system set in motion from that very first moment. And it doesn't stop there. The second major change in this one verse is the word Elohim, which we almost always translate as God. The speaker argues it's not a name at all. Instead, it describes a process, the entire system or ministry by which creation moves toward the divine. So in this view, Genesis 1:1 isn't about a person named God creating things. It's about a completed system called creation and a process called Elohim being kicked into gear. So, you can probably see where this is going. If you completely change the meaning of the very first sentence of the Bible, it's going to have some massive ripple effects, right? Let's look at how it totally reframes two huge concepts, the covenant and salvation. This really lays out the shift perfectly. Instead of seeing the Old and New Testaments as two separate deals, an old one that failed and was replaced by a new one, the speaker argues it's all one single unfolding covenant. The rules of the game were set at the very beginning. and they're just expressed differently in two stages of one master plan. And this brings us to what might be his most direct, and for some, most controversial challenge to modern theology. If everything is a process, a journey, then the idea that salvation is a one-time, irreversible event is, in his view, a profound and even dangerous mistake. He argues that this belief can make people complacent, and it can remove the urgent need to live a righteous life.
So instead, he lays out salvation as this 5-stage journey. You start as a general person, then you might become a churchgoer. The next step is justification through faith. But that's not the end. It's followed by the most critical stage, living a righteous life. And only after you've gone through that whole process do you reach the final stage, actual salvation or deliverance.
So let's just nail this down. The big crucial point is this. In this view, salvation isn't the starting gun, it's the finish line. It's not something you're just handed at the beginning, but something you achieve at the end. It is the destination of a long, difficult journey, and success is not guaranteed.
So this entire Hebrew-based rereading really comes in and challenges some of the most fundamental assumptions of modern faith. It completely reframes our understanding of creation, of God, and of the path to salvation. So let's do a quick recap of the speaker's main points. First, if you really want to understand the Bible, you have to get your hands dirty with the original Hebrew. Second, when you do that, it can radically change the meaning of key words we take for granted, like create and even God. And third, this transforms core ideas like the covenant and salvation from being single, static events into lifelong, dynamic processes. And all of this brings us to the final, really provocative question that's at the heart of this entire analysis. If salvation is a process and not a guaranteed promise sealed from day one, it forces a profound reevaluation of one's own faith. Is it a certainty, or could it be a delusion? It's a challenging thought for sure, and it's the core of this entire linguistic and theological deep dive.